for the judge to say that evidence of a mass shooting, which captured the public's attention, can be copyrighted, is to say effectively that any evidence involved in any crime that individuals don't want you to see in power can then be put under copyright, and journalism is dead. 90 new pages from the Nashville Shooters Manifesto are right now, as of this moment, being published by the Tennessee Star. So it's happening simultaneously. We have the first look. These pages have never been seen before. And I want to walk you through why we are here where we are. Michael Patrick Leahy of the Tennessee Star is going to be joining us. And we'll also be promoting his legal defense fund because he's probably going to need it. Let me explain to you why. So March 27th, you remember this, 2023, there was a shooting at the Covenant School, Nashville, left 3 children, 3 adults dead. Okay. The police at that point in time, right, recovered a manifesto. And you have to remember that put yourself back at this moment in time, white supremacy was the biggest threat to national security and democracy. And think of Dylan Roof. Think of all these other mass shootings where they told you white men, cis white men, are the prototype of mass shooters. Okay. This shooting happens. Police recover a manifesto. Great. That's good. You understand the motive. You understand the why. And they often do release these manifestos, as you saw with the trolling manifesto of Christ Church, right? The media's had a tendency to do this. We have not. This is where the roles flipped, because all of a sudden the media was not interested in the reasoning, the why, the manifesto. Police had it, April 29th. They told Fox News that they would be releasing it, to be clear. So we didn't just go rogue. You were all told, hey, this was a travesty, and you're going to know why.
Well, last night, the Nashville police said they would finally release the manifesto of the trans shooter who murdered 3 children and 3 adults in a Christian school. The big question we all want to know is why now? In a statement, the police department told Fox News, quote, the investigation has progressed to the point where the Covenant shooter's writings are now being reviewed for public release.
And then there was a lawyer and some families and activists who said, no, we don't want this release, tried to block it. Okay, November 6th, 2023. We, right here, published. We procured this exclusively, and our source, by the way, is as safe as can be, snug as a bug in a rug. We published these 3 pages of the writings that actually provided some illuminating details as to the motivations of Audrey Hale, the shooter, and the radical trans leftist ideology. I hope I have a high death count. Ready to die, haha, signed, Aiden. Next page, Audrey. Kill those kids, 3 exclamation points. Those crackers going to private fancy schools with those fancy khakis and sports backpacks with their daddies, Mustangs, and convertibles. Fuck you little shits. I wish to shoot you weak ass dicks with your mop yellow hair. Wanna kill all you little crackers again. Bunch of little f***s with your white privileges. Fuck you, f***s. So you see the words white privilege appear. Of course, this person was a transgender individual, and that's why the story kind of went away in legacy media while you helped pick this up and amplify it. Replace the word cracker and white privilege with the N-word or any other racial epithet. Do you doubt for a second that you would have this information? Okay. This brings us to July 5th, 2024, where a judge in Tennessee, Aisha Miles, ruled that the remaining pages of the manifesto wouldn't be released. Here's why. Tennessee courts have determined that unfettered access to every record at any time does not serve to uphold the system of justice that we all depend upon to ensure that the criminal legal system and investigations remain fair and impartial for every involved person. But you did say before this local police, they did say they were going to be releasing it, reviewing it for release. And there was a call to know what happened. Because a lot of people don't want another Vegas shooting where a mass shooting happens and it doesn't add up, it doesn't make sense, and you never hear why. It's also relevant because this was the Trans National Day of Vengeance around this point in time. And in Nashville, particularly in Tennessee, there were a lot of trans laws that were being looked at, and people were being told that it was trans genocide from conservatives. Here's something else. Judge Miles also said in the ruling that the families of the victims owned the copyright over the materials. Okay, this is why this is scary.
Yeah.
Now, to be clear, it's not all families, and certainly not all family members. and this is where I want to be very clear. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that anyone involved is a crisis actor or disingenuous. Not at all. I want to be very, very clear about that. What I am saying is that I don't know if you know this, tragedies take place and there are different sets of victims. Those victims are still people, and those people have families who do have ideological motivations. That's why you can have a mass shooting that takes place, and they can be stopped by, let's say, an off-duty police officer with an AR-15, and you can have families of people who were shot still say we need to ban AR-15s. Why? Because they are ready to go out there and push an agenda before the bodies assume room temperature. These families are grieving, and they deserve your prayers, obviously, and your support, but they are not above. They are not above politicizing these issues. So it's very clear to say these are some families with some lawyers. But for the judge to say that evidence of a mass shooting which captured the public's attention can be copyrighted is to say effectively that any evidence involved in any crime that individuals don't want you to see in power can then be put under copyright, and journalism is dead. Think about that. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
They copyright a piece of evidence we don't want you to know. They can now select which manifestos you see, which writings, which influences, and then they can tell you what the greatest threat to democracy is. Well, it's Christian white supremacists. Why? Because everything else has been copyrighted, put under lock and key. If you want to release it, if you want to do your job of due diligence in journalism, you are going to be sued into a federal court because of copyright law.
Yeah. Even worse, the police stations could just copyright their emails. They could copyright internal communications. So there goes FOIA requests for pretty much anything.
Or their family, the families of the policemen with a lawyer.
Yeah.
That's the thing. These are
Exactly.
That's the issue here. The implications are so far and wide, it is spine-chilling. If this would be new law, to be clear.
Yes.
And it would permanently affect investigative journalism. And that's by design. They want to scare you. They want to scare Mud Club Undercover. They want to scare Patrick Leahy of the Tennessee Star into silence, saying, it's copyright law.
Yeah.
You sure you want to violate it? It's an extreme version of what we've experienced here on YouTube, where if we criticize Stephen Colbert, they say it's a violation of copyright, you get a strike on your channel, and it may eventually be removed. No, that's not how copyright works. And this, as it relates to evidence, is certainly not how copyright law has ever been applied.
Right.
Going to bring on Patrick Leahy, but let me give you some snippets here as to what is in the remaining 90 or 80 some pages. Things like no brown girls, no love. These are quotes. I am nothing. Brown love is the most beautiful. And of course, there are other references, as we've already given you, to crackers, to white people, to self-loathing due to trans radical ideology. This is someone who is radicalized. They want you to believe that the only people who can be radicalized are people in trench coats who played Doom at Columbine. I don't know if you know this. If you combine radical ideology with perhaps mind-altering hormones or advice telling you that, yeah, that's right, you're born in the wrong body, and society telling you that, yeah, absolutely, this is wrong. Your meat vehicle, your shell, that doesn't represent who you are. It is a descent into madness. And if you have ever experienced a loved one or someone close to you who has circled the drain and descended into madness, you know what it feels like, you know what it looks like, and this very much seems to resemble that. So let's bring on here for the first time to discuss this from the Tennessee Star, Mr. Patrick Leahy.
This opportunity.
Oops.
And I want to tell all your listeners.
Sorry,
Steve,
Patrick. We were stinging you in because we wanted it to feel really cool. But go ahead and say what you said there. We missed the first half.
Are you going to sing me in?
We already did.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen.
But thanks for being here.
So look, I want to say that the first big break here was yours. Back in November, you got one page from what we're calling the 2023 Covenant Killers Journal, which we released in full today. And then you got 2 pages from the Spiral Notebook, which was the operational attack plan. And we don't have that Spiral Notebook. So you've been following this. Yeah, we've released today, just a moments ago, as we were coming on your show, 90 pages of the Covenant Killers Journal from 2023. This was the document obtained by police. It was left in her car right after she murdered those 3 9-year-olds and the 3 staff members. And then she in turn was killed by Metro Nashville Police. Moments later, they discovered this journal. That afternoon, they went to her house Steve, and they recovered 20 additional journals going back for about 15 years. So about 1,000 pages all told. We've just have 90 pages.
Well, and by the way, for people who are just tuning in, they can go and support your legal defense fund. Please bring it up there, TennesseeStar.com/donate, because there are some ramifications here with you releasing this, and we appreciate the brass pair that it takes. Let me ask you this, because I know there are things that you can tell us and things that you can't, so don't worry about offending me. You can just tell me to take a hike. What can you tell us about how you were able to
Yeah, they were
acquire
legally
the pages?
obtained in June of 2024.
Okay.
That's how we obtained it. And so you'll notice on the document, we've put a Tennessee Star watermark on it. That is so that everybody knows these are trustworthy and they are authentic. Because I'm telling you right now, we legally obtained these documents from a source familiar with the Metro Nashville Police Department investigation.
Okay. So it's procured legally. That's how you got it.
Yeah.
But now they're saying it may be illegal. It may be copyright infringement for you to actually.
Well, there's two elements to it. The first, as you may recall, back in June, the presiding judge in the Chancery Court, Ashia Miles, called me into court after we published some articles based upon this journal, which we had back in early June. We didn't publish the actual pages, the handwritten pages themselves. And she issued a show cause hearing order for me to show up and explain why she shouldn't charge me with contempt of court. A week later, I showed up, and she didn't talk at all about that. She never showed the court order. There's one court order, but it has nothing to do with us publishing legally obtained documents. It had to do with how documents were submitted to the court.
Right. So
yeah,
sorry, continue.
Well, she may at some point, she may want to come back, although she's made her decision and we're appealing it in appeals court. She may want to come back and say, oh, I want to revisit that issue. I've got great counsel. I'm not worried about it because we have every right to do it.
Well, that begs the question, why? Why are they so aggressive in trying to suppress this and ensure that the public doesn't see it? We know from the three pages that we had earlier that it painted a pretty clear picture as to motivation, as to, obviously this person is insane. There's no doubt about that. But why do you think there's been such a concerted effort to suppress this when, like you've said, this is something that we should have access to and you've obtained legally? Yeah,
and just the key point on all this, Stephen, what this shows is a massive failure of our mental health system. That's the real issue. That's the root cause of why this happened. Audrey Elizabeth Hale was treated by Vanderbilt University Medical Center for 22 years for psychiatric problems, and it didn't work. And she'd been on various drugs for at least 5 years, and those were problems. She also, we've got evidence that we reported earlier on, not from the Covenant Killers journal, but from documents we legally obtained from the investigation, that members of Vanderbilt University Medical Center knew that she threatened her father, knew that she wanted to do a mass murder at a school, and did nothing. There's a duty to warn, which they violated. So I think there's some concern there about potential exposure by Vanderbilt University Medical Center.
Well, it also appears that there's, from what I've reviewed, and by the way, these pages will be available. Not only you can follow Mr. Leahy, but at louderwithcrowder.com, we have an article there, and on Twitter. It does reveal some self-loathing. And again, the kind of self-loathing matters where this person, Audrey Hale, describes white nothingness and white privilege embarrassment of self. And there does seem to be a theme of this sort of reviling of whiteness. And of course, this person was white. So would you say that, again, in combination with we had those 3 pages, it shows that there's a bias or some sort of self-loathing for white people?
I think she was so deeply troubled, Stephen. She was troubled about everything about herself, about her sexuality, about her gender, about her competence as a professional person in the world. And she had self-loathing in every regard. She also considered herself a woman who should have been born male. She wanted to be transgender. She wrote about that. She wrote about her imaginary penis and what she wanted to do with her imaginary penis with various females. So a very troubled person who'd been under psychiatric care for 22 years, and that psychiatric care appears to have made her worse, not better.
Well, that was what I was going to say. This what we have access to begs a lot of questions. And it begs a lot of questions because we know, if you look from the DSM-5 to the DSM-4 to DSM-5, that we've changed what gender dysmorphia, where it used to be someone who has a disorder where someone believes that they're born into the wrong body. Then it became listed as the symptoms of someone who is dealing with being in the wrong body. And so this would beg some questions, right, as far as investigative journalists. What kind of care did she receive? In other words, if she was already unstable and this happened to be a comorbidity, which is how it would be treated anywhere else, okay, is that how they dealt with it? Or did they say, oh, you know what, this is the root cause of all, you're not mentally unhealthy, you're born into the wrong body. We don't know, but it does seem, looking at these pages, that it gets worse. This is a person who said, I need a trans doctor. The female gender role makes me not want to exist. These are pretty severe words, and I do wonder, how were her doctors treating her? If she goes in and says, the female gender role makes me not want to exist, are they saying, hey, no, you are a woman, you shouldn't hate yourself for that. There's a lot of beauty to be found in womanhood. Or is it, okay, yeah, you're transgender. There are so many questions.
Yeah, and those questions need to be answered. And again, Stephen, this relates to all of the troubles that young children have had in America in the past several decades. All of them that go under psychiatric treatment, they get various drugs that have various difficult side effects. And I think she's an example of how this has backfired.
Yeah, I think it's an example of how not only has mental health backfired, but our system of law enforcement, because the warning should have been out there. So again, I think the reason is not just that this person is a radical trans ideologist, but how did they get to be that way? And when they expressed a desire to commit massive acts of violence, how was nobody in the vicinity made aware? Those are two fundamental roles of these institutions when we're told to have faith in them. And it seems like both failed completely. Not some percent, 100% failed.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. We know this from the notes that we obtained legally from the lead investigator, who looked at the results of the search warrant they got from Vanderbilt University Medical Center and said, yeah, she threatened she wanted to kill her father. She wanted to participate in a mass murder at a school. There's a Tennessee law that provides that says that medical professionals and medical institutions have a duty to warn if there's a threat of this nature.
Yeah.
And clearly, Vanderbilt University Medical Center and those professionals failed in that duty to warn because the father didn't know. Nobody knew. And that's a key element, I think, here that Stephen, the Tennessee General Assembly will consider in its next session.
Well, yeah, Audrey Hale wrote in this, what you have released today, this journal, a day without a father will be a better day. Let me ask you this, because there were some rumors out there, some gossip, people saying, no, actually these 3 pages that Michael Undercover released, it's not representative of the fact that she was sexually abused by her father. I have heard it from other people. There were reporters saying this. To the best of my knowledge, again, that was pure hearsay. There's no evidence of that.
There is zero evidence. And this is very important. This is why all this information is in the public interest to be released. It actually should have been released. The judge, I believe, in the state court made several very, very bad mistakes. And it should have been released because if you release the information, false rumors are taken care of,
right,
and shown to be false. There's no evidence whatsoever of any sexual abuse by anybody, either father or even anybody at the Covenant School. None.
Yeah, that's important to note because that would explain away some of the failures. It wasn't a failure of the medical facilities, the mental health care. It wasn't a failure of law enforcement. This is someone who is tormented by sexual abuse of a father, and that's why it's very irresponsible for people to go out there.
We have not seen the spiral notebook. You got 2 pages of it. There's probably another 80 pages. We'd like to see what that is. That was the operational plan of attack. We've not seen basically 1,000 pages of 20 other journals. And she had some information on thumb drives. Now, we have a legal right to get those. The one exception in the Tennessee Public Records Act is you can't release them for an ongoing investigation. Well, Metro Nashville Police back in March said the investigation would be over in July. Here we are, September 3rd. They're still saying it's not over. That is a stalling tactic.
Right.
It's intended to subvert the law. and the judge's ruling on copyright, a state is entirely wrong. First, the ownership of the Covenant Parents Trust is dubious at best, and number one. And number two, a state judge has nothing to say about copyright law. That's a federal issue.
Right.
Now, in theory, perhaps the group that claims ownership, might file a copyright infringement lawsuit against us. That's why we are represented by the Dillon Group in that matter, if that were to come up.
Mm-hmm.
But to do that, they'd first have to register the documents. I don't even think they have the documents in their possession, although they claim ownership.
Right.
But the parents of the killer who claim Audrey Elizabeth Hale died intestate, we're not sure that's the case. They told the probate court she died intestate, but there's a suicide note. You can see it right in our journal, right in the journal we released today, or in our previous articles that we released today. There's a note from one of the crime scene photos. Her suicide note said, "Please read my will." Well, where is that will?
Mm-hmm.
A reason to believe that a document that could be a will was actually submitted to the Tennessee Chancery Court, but has been prohibited from being released to the probate court. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, it points to a lot of failures here. It points to a failure of society at large in the conditioning, not only, I would say, anti-maledom, anti-whiteness, but you can be whatever you want to be, the radical trans ideology, the trans day of vengeance. What was happening with these mental health care professionals? That's a question that needs to be answered. And then how did law enforcement flip-flop, and why all of a sudden is investigation ongoing? And by the way, people can point the finger and blame folks watching, someone watching right now, for not trusting their institutions. But we just had the FBI collude with big tech to remove the Hunter Biden laptop story, saying it was Russian disinformation, when they knew for a fact that it wasn't, and Mark Zuckerberg apologized. Hey, if you're still watching this video, comment below. Sorry, I'm parched. I can't drink from that. But you can click the video and watch it. But what is it a hat?